우러러 한 점 부끄럼이 없기를. 잎새이는 바람에도 나는 괴로워했다. 별을 노래하는 마음으로 모든 죽어가는 것을 사랑해야지. 그리고 나한테 주어진 길을 걸어가야겠다. 오늘 밤에도 별이 바람에 스치운다. 한국인들이라면 한 번쯤 들어본 시일 텐데요. 바로 서시입니다. 이 시를 쓴 주인공, 바로 윤동주 시인입니다. 안녕하세요. 반크에서 활동하는 권소영 연구원입니다. 서시, 별에는 밤, 자화상 등을 쓴 윤동주 시인은 한국인이 가장 사랑하는 시인 중 한 명으로 꼽히는데요. 가끔 윤동주 시인의 정보에서 오해와 오류가 보이더라고요. 제가 윤동주 시인에 대한 제대로 된 정보를 알려드릴게요. 대일항쟁기였던 1917년에 태어난 윤동주는 평생 한국어로만 시를 쓰며 민족의 아픔을 위로했던 시인이에요. 폭넓게 세상을 접하고 더 많은 것을 배우기 위해 일본 유학을 떠났던 윤동주는 1943년 7월 한국인 유학생들을 대상으로 민족 문화와 독립 정신을 고취시켰다는 혐의로 일본 경찰에 체포됐습니다. 1945년 2월 윤동주는 28세의 나이로 후쿠오카 형무소에서 숨을 거뒀는데요. 암울했던 식민지 시절, 민족에 대한 사랑과 독립에 대한 염원을 시로 쓴 윤동주 시인. 우리가 기억해야 할 아름다운 이름입니다. 한국 바로 알리기. 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
Held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the status UN summit.
A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. The U.S. and Iran have reached a peace deal to end fighting and lift the naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the deal will be officially signed this Friday in Switzerland. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung, who's on a 10-day Europe trip, attended a special mass for peace and solidarity in Rome and pledged to do all he can to build peace on the Korean peninsula. He's set to meet with Pope Leo at the Holy See on Monday. Korea's defense minister says a target date for the transfer of wartime operational control from the United States could be proposed to the leaders of both countries by the end of this year, as the administration seeks to complete it before the president's term ends in 2030. The United States and Iran have announced a complete cessation of hostilities and the lifting of the naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. The newly minted Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding means a permanent truce on all fronts, including Lebanon. Our Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
The deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete. Congratulations to all. Posted on Truth Social Sunday, President Trump's statement declared an end to the 106-day war. It follows the finalization of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding in Tehran, a bilateral framework mediated by Pakistan and Qatar that orders an immediate end to the U.S. naval blockade and a toll-free reopening of the Strait of Hormuz.
Nearly 14 to 15 hours of lengthy talks took place, during which we presented the Islamic Republic of Iran's final amendments to the text. Naturally, those amendments were accepted, and the text of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding was finalized.
The accord mandates an immediate and permanent cessation of military operations across all fronts, explicitly including active conflict zones in Lebanon. While political authorization is immediate, the physical removal of naval assets and active mine clearance across the Strait of Hormuz are projected to take between 2 weeks and 30 days. President Trump later modified his timeline, stating that the formal opening for oil transit will coincide with the official signing ceremony scheduled for this Friday in Geneva, Switzerland. Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile and broader nuclear program have been deferred to a secondary 60-day phase of structured negotiations. President Trump framed the deal as an unprecedented victory that prior administrations failed to achieve. Iran's semi-official Mehr news agency reported what it says is a 14-point draft of the deal, which includes a 30-day window to lift the blockade under Iranian arrangements, a $300 billion U.S.-led reconstruction plan, and the release of half of Iran's frozen funds before final talks began. Washington has yet to confirm these points, and Tehran is apparently claiming victory in the war.
The United States was forced to sign a memorandum to end the war with the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Resistance Front.
As for the signing ceremony in Geneva, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is scheduled to lead the American delegation. White House officials indicate that President Trump may also attend the signing ceremony. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And now for more on the ceasefire between the United States and Iran, we're joined today by Professor Kim Jae-chun, Professor of International Relations at the Graduate School of International Studies at Seoul University. Professor Kim, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So, President Donald Trump has confirmed that the U.S. and Iran have reached a peace deal. Does this mean the crisis is effectively over?
Well, I would have to say no. The crisis is far from over. What we are seeing right now is not a final peace agreement, but more of a preliminary framework, an MOU that sets the stage for further negotiations. The real issues, such as Iran's nuclear program, sanctions relief, and even the security of the Strait of Hormuz, I think these issues are still unresolved, and they are expected to be negotiated over the next 60 to 90 days. And frankly speaking, I think this process could take even longer than 90 days, because these are extremely complicated and politically very sensitive issues. The bigger problem I see is that both countries still harbor deep distrust, if you will, toward each other, and that underlying mistrust doesn't disappear simply because they are going to sign a document. So while this agreement may reduce immediate tensions, there are plenty of potential roadblocks, if you will, down the road, and any of them could derail the process and bring tensions back up quite easily, to be honest.
I see. And you just mentioned Iran's nuclear programs, and a lot of attention is now on the details of this peace deal that's expected to be signed on Friday in Switzerland. And the Trump administration officials have said that averting the risk of Iranian nuclear weapons would be central to any deal. So what might the agreement look like when it comes to Iran's nuclear program?
Well, once again, to be honest, I don't expect the MOU itself to include any substantial or concrete commitments on Iran's nuclear program. In fact, one of the key reasons this agreement was even possible was that both countries decided to postpone the most difficult issues, which are nuclear issues. So that's the reason. I mean, think about it. Initially, the Trump administration pushed for very strong conditions, such as long-term suspension of uranium enrichment on the part of Iranians, possibly for 20 years, or even the transfer of highly enriched uranium stockpiles to the United States in its entirety. Iran, of course, firmly rejected those demands. So what they have done instead is essentially agree to disagree for now. The MOU is likely to contain only a very general commitment on the part of Iranians not to pursue nuclear weapons without specifying how that commitment would be implemented or verified. The real negotiation on the nuclear issue has been pushed into the next phase of negotiation, which again highlights how fragile this current agreement actually is going to be.
I see. And another thing to consider is the conflict in Lebanon, because analysts say Israel and Hezbollah are key to whether this ceasefire deal will last. How do you see the conflict in Lebanon unfolding from here?
And I think this is one of the most critical and also most unpredictable variables going forward. President Trump really went great lengths, in my personal opinion, to persuade Prime Minister Netanyahu and to restrain Israel's military action against Hezbollah. But the key question is, how long, really, how long will Israel actually exercise their restraint? Because from Israel's perspective, Hezbollah remains a direct and immediate security threat. And that perception is not going to change overnight. So if tensions flare up again along the Lebanon border, Israel could resume military operations, and that would inevitably complicate or even undermine the broader U.S. Iran negotiations process. In that sense, the Israel-Hezbollah dynamic is very much one of those thorny issues that could easily destabilize the entire diplomatic effort.
Right, and Pakistan and Qatar have played key roles in brokering this deal amid recent fears that this conflict could reignite. How did these two countries manage to bring about such a dramatic turnaround?
I think Pakistan's role has been quite interesting here. First of all, Pakistan has strategic incentives to act as a mediator. We'll have to understand that because it maintains working relations with both Iran and the United States. And it has a strong interest in preventing further instability in the region, especially given its own security and energy concerns. But I think what really made a difference this time is the role of Pakistan's military leadership, particularly General Asim Munir. Sure, historically, the military has been the key decision-making center in foreign and security policy in Pakistan. But this time, really, General Munir has actively engaged in back-channel diplomacy. Pakistan was able to provide a communication channel that both countries trusted, particularly that the role of Munir was very instrumental here. So in a way, Pakistan's effectiveness came from a combination of strategic positioning, military-led diplomacy, particularly on the part of General Asim Munir, and its ability to talk to both countries without being seen as overly biased towards either side.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how the situation plays out from here. All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
It was good to be here. Thank you.
Korean stocks soared more than 5% after opening on Monday following news of a ceasefire deal between the United States and Iran. The benchmark KOSPI opened at 8,526.12, up 4.95% from the previous session. Gains accelerated beyond 5% shortly after the opening bell, triggering a buy-side sidecar just 6 minutes into trading. The secondary KOSDAQ also opened higher, gaining more than 1%. Market sentiment improved as the deal between Washington and Tehran eased geopolitical concerns and boosted investor sentiment. The $1 exchange rate opened at 1,511.4 Korean won, down 8.4 Korean won from the previous session. Over in Rome, President Lee Jae-myung has attended a special mass for peace and solidarity. He vowed to do all he can to build peace on the Korean peninsula in a special speech. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
Peace was an overarching theme during a special mass on Sunday at the Basilica of St. Paul in Rome. The Mass for Peace and Solidarity was celebrated by South Korean Cardinal Lazaro Yuhung-sik and attended by President Lee Jae-myung.
People on the Korean peninsula still live with the scar of division. What more pain could there be?
The message was echoed by President Lee, who said the South Korean government will continue its efforts to prevent accidental clashes between the two Koreas and restore military trust.
정전 상태를 넘어 지속 가능한 평화 체제를 구축하기 위해서도 할 수 있는 모든 것을 다할 생각입니다.
Reiterating the suspension of the propaganda loudspeaker campaign against Pyongyang, President Lee once again made it clear that he does not seek reunification by absorption. He referred to the Inter-Korean Joint Declaration announced in 2000.
오랜 적대와 긴장을 넘어 대화와 협력의 가능성을 전 세계에 알린 역사적인 전환점이었습니다. 저는 지금도 그 희망의 불씨가 살아있다고 확신합니다.
President Lee also thanked the Holy See for its support for peace on the peninsula and promised the country will play a greater role for the world, calling it a shared responsibility.
한반도의 평화가 세계 평화로 이어지고 세계의 연대가 다시 한반도의 평화를 굳건하게 만드는 선순환을 함께 만들어 가기를 희망합니다.
He went on to promise greater support for World Youth Day, a major Catholic camp event set to be held in Seoul next year, during which Pope Leo XIV will visit Korea. The topic is expected to extend into Monday's meeting between President Lee and Pope Leo at the Holy See. Eyes are on whether Lee will officially ask the Pope to pay a visit to the North, amid renewed protests by the North over a recent joint statement by South Korea and the European Union. All this as the South Korean president sends a message of peace and solidarity as the world continues to face conflicts and tensions remain high on the Korean peninsula. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, The Vatican.
U.S. President Donald Trump has held separate calls with the leaders of Russia and Ukraine ahead of the G7 summit, where the war is expected to dominate discussions. Both Moscow and Kyiv say the conversations focused on efforts to move closer to a possible peace settlement. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy each had separate phone calls with U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday, ahead of this week's G7 summit, where the war in Ukraine is expected to be a major topic. According to the Kremlin, Putin's conversation with Trump lasted just under an hour. Russian officials said Trump stressed the need to end the conflict and expressed a willingness to work with European allies and Ukraine toward a settlement. Moscow also stated that Trump suggested a swift end to the war could lead to a significant improvement in U.S.-Russia relations. Putin, meanwhile, reportedly argued that Ukrainian attacks on Russian civilian infrastructure would not alter the situation on the battlefield and reiterated his openness to meeting directly with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy. Separately, Zelenskyy described his own call with Trump as productive. In his evening address, the Ukrainian president said he wished Trump a happy 80th birthday and thanked him for the support Washington has provided throughout the war. Zelenskyy said the two discussed steps that could help bring peace closer and that he updated Trump on the situation along the Eastern Front, where Ukraine's position has recently strengthened.
We have one wish for President Trump, all Ukrainians do, that peace can finally be achieved so that we can achieve this success together with America, together with all our partners.
The Ukrainian leader added that the two agreed to continue their discussions at the G7 summit, where he is expected to join world leaders later this week, as efforts to end the war remain high on the international agenda. 이승재, 아리랑 뉴스.
And South Korea's defense minister says a target date for regaining wartime operational control from the United States could be proposed to the leaders of both countries by the end of this year. Defense Minister An Kyu-baek told Korean broadcaster KBS on Sunday that discussions on South Korea's full operational capability assessment will take place at the Allied Security Consultative Meeting in November, after which a timeline proposal could be submitted to the two presidents. The Lee Jae-myung administration hopes to complete the transfer before East term ends in 2030. An acknowledged there may be differences between Seoul and Washington on the timing, but said close consultations are underway. Interest in learning Korean is increasingly growing across Vietnam. For many young people, Korean proficiency has become a valuable credential for university admissions and job opportunities. Our Kim So-young reports.
Nervous test takers check which room they were assigned to before heading inside. This is the first test of proficiency in Korean, or TOPIK, held in Vietnam this year. Last year, more than 85,000 people in Vietnam took the test. That was the largest number of test takers anywhere in the world. Korean culture may have sparked the interest, but job opportunities are now giving more Vietnamese a practical reason to study the language.
This test gives employers an objective measure of my Korean ability, and it will help me find a better job.
The boom is also being fueled by growing economic ties between South Korea and Vietnam. As more Korean companies expand into Vietnam, demand for workers who can speak Korean has grown rapidly. Vietnam's education authorities are also moving in step. After choosing Korean as one of the most important foreign languages in 2021, the country now has about 35,000 students learning Korean at roughly 80 universities and 160 high schools. The momentum is expected to pick up even more. Starting this year, TOPIK scores can be officially recognized as scores in Vietnam's high school graduation exam.
Students who earn level 3 on the test or higher can be exempt from the foreign language test of the graduation exam.
But as the number of test takers grows, cheating is becoming a rising concern. Last year, 554 cheating cases were reported nationwide, the highest on record. As the number of test takers continues to grow, stronger safeguards will be needed to ensure the exam remains fair and credible. Kim So-young, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. The U.S. government has ordered AI company Anthropic to shut off all foreign access to its most powerful models, including Mythos, after researchers discovered a way to bypass the system's safety guardrails. In an unprecedented move, the Commerce Department directed Anthropic to suspend access to its Fable 5 and Mythos 5 models for any foreign nationals anywhere in the world. Anthropic cut off all customers globally to ensure compliance, but said it disagreed that a narrow jailbreak should trigger the recall. Amazon researchers had conducted the jailbreak research that revealed the vulnerability and were in contact with the U.S. government before the order was issued. President Trump's AI advisor David Sachs said the administration wants Anthropic to fix the vulnerability as soon as possible so access can be restored. Swiss voters have rejected a proposal to cap the country's population at 10 million. In a referendum on Sunday, 55% voted against the measure in a result that relieved businesses and preserved the country's free movement agreement with the European Union. The right-wing Swiss People's Party had championed the cap, arguing that rapid population growth was straining public services and pushing up rents. Switzerland's population currently stands at 9.1 million and is projected to reach 10 million by the early 2040s, with foreigners making up nearly 28% of residents. Business groups warned a yes vote would have limited access to foreign workers and damaged the economy. In the Philippines, the death toll from last week's magnitude 7.8 earthquake in the southern Philippines has risen to at least 61, with 40 people still missing. Scientists also confirmed the tremor had raised the seabed by up to 2 meters, exposing coral reefs and killing marine life across a wide stretch of coastline. The geological phenomenon known as coastal uplift extended shorelines by as much as 200 meters in some areas of Sarangani and Davao Occidental provinces. Residents initially reported the changes out of concern they might be harmed by fumes from decaying sea life. In the U.S., a plane crash in Butler, Missouri on Sunday killed 11 skydivers and the pilot. According to a local official, the plane failed to gain altitude shortly after takeoff, stalled, and hit the ground nose first before bursting into flames, with reports saying that family members of some of the victims were watching. Federal Aviation Administration officials and a National Transportation Safety Board team responded to the scene.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with the latest weather updates. We need to dress a little lighter this week as summer-like heat continues to build across the country. And under mostly sunny skies, temperatures will rise quickly today with plenty of sunshine. That said, UV levels will be very high in most parts of the country this afternoon, so sun safety is a must during the day. However, not everyone will stay completely dry today. Between this afternoon and early evening, passing rain is in the forecast for Jeollado Province and parts of Gangwon-do Province with 5 to 10 millimeters expected. And this afternoon, except for the East Coast regions where temperatures will stay in the low 20s, the rest of the country will see highs in the 30s. Seoul will be getting up to sizzling 32 degrees Celsius. Daejeon and Gwangju both will make it to 31 degrees. Daegu will be at 30 degrees Celsius. But at least the humidity will be relatively low, so please look for some shade. Summer is definitely making its presence felt across the Korean peninsula, and the hot weather should continue throughout the week, with daytime highs hovering above 30 degrees Celsius in many parts of Korea under mostly sunny skies.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
A smile passed down to us across time. Why are people so captivated by it? In the vast exhibition hall, filling the empty space, stand just two sculptures. They are the pensive bodhisattvas, carried across some 14 centuries. Created about 50 years apart in the Three Kingdoms period, the two figures resemble each other but differ in beauty. The one on the left, from the late 6th century, wears a pointed crown engraved with the sun and moon, while a silk-like drapery flows gently over its shoulders. In contrast, the figure on the right, crafted in the 7th century, makes a striking impression with its simplicity and restraint. A plain, three-peaked crown, bare chest with only two necklaces. Unlike the lightly incised folds of the left, the right feels weighty and dynamic, like heavy cloth. Lower your gaze, and you'll notice remarkable detail at the feet. While the late 6th century figure appears still and contemplative, its toes extended in a straight line rendered with shallow incisions. The figure on the right seems to gather strength in a fleeting moment of contemplation. Its toes, slightly curled, conveying a vivid sense of dynamic vitality. Two distinct figures, yet in these tranquil smiles from 1500 years ago, we find a quiet comfort for our weary lives.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, June 15th here in Seoul. I'm Seojin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Hyun.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Also, Brooke is with us.
Hello and happy Pride.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're starting off a brand new work week, and one event from the weekend is still generating plenty of discussion. It brought thousands of people together and sparked conversations both at the venue and beyond. So how did this year's Seoul Queer Culture Festival go, Hyun?
Firstly, the 27th Seoul Queer Festival, or SQCF, kicked off on June 1st and is running until the 28th in Central Seoul under the theme Intersection Connecting Differences. Now, the main event, which is a Seoul Queer Parade, happened over the weekend, actually, on Saturday the 13th, in the area between Uljido Ilga Station and Jonggak Station. Now, outdoor booths were set up, as you can see on the screen, along with live music, speeches, and public marches to promote LGBTQ+ visibility, human rights, and cultural enjoyment, and of course, pride. The exact number of attendees have not been reported yet, but according to the Seoul Queer Parade Executive Committee, around 17,000 people were expected to participate. Notably, the number has been growing steadily. In 2022, roughly 13,500 people turned up, while in 2024, there were around 15,000, and last year, approximately 17,000 people actually enjoyed the festival, again highlighting the expansion of the public culture event and promoting openness for anyone to attend.
Right, so seeing this event is continuing to grow, both in size and in visibility, reflecting how conversations around diversity and inclusion are becoming part of the mainstream. But at the same time, the event also highlighted the different views that still exist within our society. So what were the main concerns raised by those who were opposing the event, Brooke?
Well, I have been to these events in Seoul many times over the years, and as you can see from the pictures that we showed, it's really a very fun, vibrant, accepting atmosphere, except for one thing, and that would be the opposition rallies that happen around the festivals. They typically have banners, they have megaphones, they do chants, and there's a lot of hateful rhetoric that comes out. And I have to give a lot of credit to the event participants. There were stories this year as well about them walking by the protesters and just giving them a smile, handling it with really a lot of grace. Now, these groups are typically religious or civic groups that say that this festival goes against their personal beliefs and their views of what a family should look like. But others, like myself, believe that it's wrong to protest against someone's very identity and existence, especially when they're just there to celebrate and be happy. But a really positive silver lining is that not all religious groups were doing that. Some religious groups actually set up welcome booths at the festival, and one pastor said that they did that because they wanted to give these minorities a feeling of comfort, that not everyone who is of faith has those feelings against them. And I thought that was quite beautiful. Also, like Ki-hoon mentioned, the slogan of this year's festival was about connecting despite your differences. And so I think that's a really good step to lead us on this discussion today.
So all this shows that while attitudes are evolving, debates over identity, values, and free expression remain complex and also deeply personal for many people. And that's why we're going to talk more about this. But first, let's take a look at the screen. For decades, South Korea has been viewed as a socially conservative society. But attitudes toward gender identity and diversity have been evolving, particularly among younger generations. Now, in its 27th year, this Seoul Queer Culture Festival has become one of the country's most visible events advocating for LGBTQ rights. Today on News Generation, we look at how Korean society has changed over the past several decades, how those shifts compare with developments in the United States, and the role millennials and Gen Z are playing in shaping the conversation.
Just as we saw in the video, attitudes toward the LGBT community have evolved significantly over time. And to understand where that change began, it's worth looking back at how Korean society has shifted over the past few decades. So how much has our society changed over the years, Kyun?
Before you look at how Koreans' perception towards LGBTQ has changed over time, it's good to have a clear understanding of the term itself. So sexual minorities is an umbrella term referring to people whose sexual orientation or gender identity places them in a social minority group. Now, in South Korea, the LGBTQ+ community began to gain public visibility in the early 1990s, with the country's first gay rights organization established in 1993. Now, that momentum continued with the inaugural Seoul Queer Parade in 2000. And that same year, a television personality who publicly came out faced intense social backlash, highlighting the challenges LGBTQ+ individuals encountered at the time. But two decades later, the landscape began to shift a lot. In 2022, dating and reality shows such as Marry Queer brought diverse sexual identities and relationships into the mainstream media spotlight. The change is also reflected in public attitudes. If you take a look at the screen, according to a survey by Korea Research, the gap in perceptions regarding the acceptance of homosexuality sexuality narrowed by 9 percentage points in 2025 compared to 2 years ago, 2023, suggesting that more people are getting there, gradually accepting and understanding sexual minorities here in Korea.
So it's interesting to see how visibility and public awareness have expanded alongside broader social discussions. And Korea's experience may be unique, but it's certainly not the only country that has undergone major changes in this area. So what kind of changes have we seen in the U.S. then, Brooke?
Well, it's important to remember that this Pride Festival didn't start as just a festival. It actually came from a point of pain and courage and bravery. So it can be traced back to the Stonewall Uprising in New York in 1969. And this was a rebellion in response to ongoing discrimination and police harassment. So a lot of the progress we see today in terms of gay rights can be credited to the bravery of the people that fought for those rights back then. So looking at the changes that have happened since, in 1973, the American Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality from its list of mental disorders. It's kind of hard to believe that it was ever on there, but thankfully it was removed. And then in 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court actually legalized same-sex marriage nationwide, a big win. Another important milestone happened in 2020 when the Supreme Court ruled that employers cannot discriminate against workers based on their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And this really significantly expanded workplace protections for LGBTQ+ Americans. Unfortunately, however, in recent years, we've started to see things backslide a bit. I was really comforted to hear what Ki-hoon said about the statistics here in Korea, that gap is narrowing, people are becoming more accepting, but I'm afraid the results of surveys in America show the opposite trend. Public acceptance has actually been declining since the 2020s, and so people in the community are very worried that they're going to lose their protections in the coming years. So I think it's important for us to have discussions like these so that we can prevent divisive rhetoric from happening and prevent the spread of hate. You know, we want to spread love here for sure.
Right, and all that timeline shows how social attitudes and also legal recognition often evolve hand in hand. And when we look at those changes, the younger generations frequently emerge as a driving force behind these big changes. So how are millennials and Gen Zs leading the shift, Kyun?
2022 survey by Gallup Korea found that more than 70% of respondents in their 20s and 30s, the MZ generation, supported the rights of sexual minorities. The survey also showed that over 80% of women in their 20s and 30s said they would be understanding and accepting if a friend or a colleague came out as LGBTQ+. However, support levels were relatively lower among male respondents, highlighting a noticeable gap in attitudes, gender gap in attitudes. While acceptance of LGBTQ rights has generally increased, differences in perception remain. So debates continue over the style and expression events, such as these the queer pride parades, where some argue that certain forms of public expression can be a little too excessive. So basically, attitudes toward LGBTQ issues in South Korea, it is definitely getting better, as in people are more accepting and understanding, and the gap is narrowing. But if we look at it a bit more closely in detail, there is a stark, I guess, difference in gender in terms of like women are a bit more, I guess, understanding and open, whereas male are a bit more, I guess, not there yet, but they're slowly getting there.
I wonder why there's a big difference, because with women you said 80%. That's like a huge gap.
I have no idea, but I'm quite open to I'm very understanding and accepting. But I think it's a cultural thing as well, how men are just brought up in Korea from the past, and I guess they need to, for once, for now, probably learn from women having a bit more open minds. So
True.
I think it was
well, you're a good example as well.
Yeah, I guess.
So it's not just genders. The numbers also suggest a generational difference, but continue playing a major role in shaping public opinion. And a similar pattern can be seen in the U.S., where younger people are redefining how identity is understood and expressed. So we talk about young Koreans, but how are younger Americans influencing the conversation these days?
Well, it's true that younger people are also more open about these topics, I would say. According to a 2023 survey in the U.S., Gen Z was significantly more likely than older generations to identify as LGBTQ+. And there was even a term that's now being discussed in popular culture called bisexual chic. This is actually the first time I have heard this term. It basically means that some people these days find bisexuality in particular to be cool or trendy, but I would warn against using this term because it seems to me a little bit derogatory towards actual bisexual people by implying that they're perhaps only identifying that way for a fad. As you can see on screen here, however, 72% of people that are Gen Z do say that they identify as heterosexual, but 28% say that they identify as a part of this community that we're talking about today. And this is in stark contrast to baby boomers and millennials as well. So overall, I think younger people seem more comfortable viewing identity and attraction as more of a spectrum, and they're not so much about the strictly defined categories. And experts point to several reasons for this trend. They say that, people in these days, they watch a lot of streaming content, they are exposed to a lot of global content, so they see more representation than before. They also grew up in a time of big social movements like Black Lives Matter and Me Too, so they've always been encouraged to kind of participate in these social discussions, and I think that's also encouraged them to be more likely to explore their own identities.
Right, so this highlights how social media, global connectivity, and changing cultural norms are creating new ways for people to think about identity. At the same time, the conversation continues to evolve, raising broader questions about diversity, inclusion, and how societies are adapting to change. So to get a more personal and in-depth perspective on this, we're going to talk to someone who is part of the LGBTQ community here in Korea. And that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us now is Kim Chul-soon, an LGBTQ content creator who discusses issues related to identity, representation, and everyday life on his social media platform. So hello, thank you so much for connecting with us today. Hi, so what are your thoughts on Korea's culture festivals, and what was your personal experience like attending it?
I think Tokyo Parade is a festival in itself. It is a festival where everyone, whether they are part of the community or not, can just enjoy together as human beings. As a queer person and a YouTuber, I have attended it a few times. I remember it was a really hot summer day. There were so many people that it was hard to even walk around. The first time I went, I was amazed and deeply moved to see so many people like me. However, across the street, people who call themselves Christian were blasting loudspeakers to ruin the festival. They were shouting loudly through megaphones on the banners filled with hate speech. It was a really unpleasant sight. I don't know if it was to fight back against that hate, but I remember our speakers being much bigger and louder than theirs. Anyway, I hope the queer parade continue to develop into a great festival for everyone there, not just for us.
Thank you for that response. My next question to you is, how have attitudes toward the LGBTQ community changed over time, both online and offline?
Yes, I definitely feel the change. I think YouTube opened the door. And I am a YouTuber myself. When I first revealed myself on YouTube and started making videos, there were very few queer channels. That's why my Korean queer friends call me the first generation. But now there are so many of them. Also, as we appear on Korean TV and OTT platform, we are naturally becoming closer to the public. But this is only looking at the good side. Korean society still lacks a legal system to protect sexual minority. That's why many people still openly use hate speech and act rudely. In that sense, it feels like a very confusing time for queer people in Korea right now.
Well, good morning to you and your adorable cat. Thank you for joining us and for sharing your experiences with us. My last question for you is, what progress would you like to see society make regarding LGBTQ rights?
I've said this so many times that it might sound cliche, but the answer is the legal recognition of same-sex marriage. Along with that, we need broad sex education for teenagers. And as I mentioned earlier, we need an anti-discrimination law to stop rude and ignorant people from disrupting the festival. They call it freedom of speech, but that's not freedom of speech. It's freedom to hate. No religion teaches hate, right? Getting our basic right recognized under law as equal citizens is a powerful and common sense tool. It will teach people to see us not as second-class citizens, but as equal human beings.
All right, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We just spoke with our Zoom guest about his experiences and his perspective on Korea's queer culture festivals and the changes he's observed in society over the years. And turning back to our panelists, compared to the past, do you personally feel attitudes toward LGBTQ people have changed, you?
Well, I grew up in Sydney where a big event, annual event called the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras is held like every year. And it was actually on TV as well. It's on TV, like news every year. And I remember seeing the Korean celebrity actually parading, and I thought, oh, why is he there? And then that's when I kind of understood about the whole community, because I was very young, I didn't really know. It came across to me as very new and unique, and I guess perhaps a little difficult to understand at first, but then because I was exposed to that community where I lived, it became quite natural, and I was became just understanding. And so when I came to Korea, after I came to Korea, I was in the model industry for a few years, and you know, in that industry, you get to meet a lot of people in the social minority group, and because of what I saw growing up, I was, you know, very, very neutral about how I responded to them and how I acted towards them. And my Korean friends were actually shocked to see how I was actually, you know, getting along with them. And I said, hey, you know, we're all the same, but we may view them in a different way, but from their perspective, they probably see us in the same light as well, being different. And like, you know, it's all about connecting the differences and accepting that difference. So for me, you know, I'm very cool with who I meet, regardless of their, you know, sexual perceptions. And I think at the end of the day, we're all humans, and as long as we're happy, that's fine. And the most important part is if they don't harm us, we shouldn't harm them.
True.
And that's the way I put it, yeah.
I think exposure is also a big reason why people are less familiar
That's right as well, yeah.
with that community in Korea. Because I remember growing up and seeing only that one Korean celebrity. But yeah, so I feel like it is changing. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, when I was growing up in the U.S., I had a lot of people around me that were in that community, but I don't think it was spoken about as openly or freely as it is now. I think a lot of that has to do with social media and the internet. When I was growing up, we had maybe MySpace. It's not like we were scrolling all day long and being able to see all of this content from other people like us that, you know, we could relate to. I think these days people in this community, they have more representation in media. They can see more love stories that look like theirs. And so I think that's a great thing, and young people are a lot more likely now to explore and to talk about what's going on with their feelings. Of course, unfortunately, this doesn't mean that everyone is going to agree or be kind about it, but I really just hope that we can continue to progress forward and see more productive conversations, people coexisting in peace.
Right, so change rarely happens in a straight line. So to wrap up our discussion today, how can societies then navigate all these different views while also moving forward and making progress, Kyun?
Perhaps like the most important part is actually trying to narrow the gap and having different kind of perceptions towards the LGBTQ community. And like how our guest said, look, we all have freedom of speech, but it's not freedom of hate. You know, a lot of people are just lashing out at them, making hateful comments that can be very hurtful. So I think, look, anywhere we go, we're going to have like extremes. That's just part of life. That's part of society. But for those who are in the middle, can be a bit more supportive and raise their voices and say, hey, you know, let's be a bit more understanding, because everyone's different. And if we don't accept that, I mean, moving forward, we're going to have so much clashes, even more. But then we're already living in a life where high inflation, everything's so expensive. It's very difficult to live a happy life. So having these kind of like, I guess I think it's a minor conflict. Getting rid of that, thinking about what really matters, what makes us happy, what makes just be ourselves, and I think, and respecting others, and keeping these three things in mind, I think, you know, everything's going to be a bit better if we don't really think about why we hate each other. You know, just think about why we
things to love about each other.
Think more about things about what we can love each other for about. So I think, yeah, it's a difficult topic to talk about on air. But then I think after hearing from our guest, you know, I've gained a deeper understanding of different people and trying to be a bit more accepting and not raising my voice. If I'm not going to say anything nice, it's just it's better to keep it silent.
Good rule of thumb. And I think a lot of the misunderstandings that come is because of just ignorance and just getting to know them, realizing they're not that much different than us, it will go a long way. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think going back to the core concept of the Seoul Queer Culture Festival that we saw this weekend, it's all about connecting despite your differences. So don't draw a line between each other just because you have a difference in identity, opinion, belief. Try to see where the other person is coming from. Try to promote acceptance and love during this time that is so polarized, with people so strongly disagreeing with each other. I would just love to see, you know, more love. And at the end of the day, we all just want to enjoy the very short time that we have on this planet. So let's all do it with love, not hate or judgment.
Right, so whether we're viewing this through the lens of rights, culture, or generational change, there's no denying that attitudes toward LGBTQ communities have evolved significantly. While greater visibility and acceptance have emerged in many parts of society, differing views continue to shape the debate. And the challenge going forward may be finding ways to bridge those differences while also continuing the conversation. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. Big thanks to Kyun.
It's always a pleasure.
And also Brooke.
Thank you for having me.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this is a week where you can see more rainbow flags and red flags. We are News Generation.
right.
안녕하세요. 저는 인도네시아에서 온 방과 회원 무티아라 하이라니입니다. 반갑습니다. 인도네시아에 왔을 때 한국 드라마를 즐겨봤어요. 그러다가 한국에 와서 대학을 다니게 됐어요. 한국 사극 드라마도 즐겨봤어요. 왕과 왕비가 살고 그리고 신하들이 회의를 하고 그리고 궁녀들이 일하는 그런 궁궐에 관심이 생겼어요. 제가 제일 좋아하는 궁은 경복궁입니다. 그런데 AI한테 경복궁 그림을 보여달라고 했더니 엉뚱한 그림을 보였다는 제보가 있었어요. 예를 들면 궁 앞에 강이 있고 나룻배가 있다든지 산 꼭대기에 있다든지 이런 오해들. 제가 직접 경복궁을 소개해 드릴게요. 같이 갈까요? 경복궁은 대한민국 역사와 문화의 중심지로 여겨져요. 조선시대 왕실의 위엄과 격식을 제대로 알 수 있는 곳이거든요. 또 경복궁은 외국인 관광객이 많이 방문하는 서울의 랜드마크 중 하나입니다. 제가